Today, I'm going to show you how to make a jazzy pop song that sounds like this.
Can we start over?
Can we start over?
Like strangers in the night. The first time I met you, you had diamonds in your eyes.
This is my brand new song called Can We Start Over? It's a collaboration with the fantastic Becca Hanna. You should go check her out. She was just a finalist on Tiny Desk, and she has a bunch of amazing new songs and another album on the way. If you like artists like Corinne Bailey Rae or Rex Orange County or Rit Momney, artists that infuse jazz into standard pop tunes, then this video is going to break down exactly how you can do that yourself in simple, easy techniques. We're not going to go too deep into music theory, but I'm going to talk about simple ways that you can add complexities to pop music, give it a sort of jazzy nuance. When I'm typically recording a pop song, you of course have guitars and bass, but when it comes to a jazz song, I'm thinking about instruments I would see in a jazz trio. Maybe that's an upright bass, maybe that's some piano. A lot of the times I'm thinking horns like a saxophone or a trumpet. So that's exactly what I did here when laying out this song. I kind of imagined a band on stage in my head and then sort of mixed and produced and chose instrumentations to kind of basically recreate that virtually. One of the coolest plugins that I found out recently that's totally free and totally recommend to you is this free horn kit by Sign or Orchestral Products. It's completely free and it's got a variety it's got trumpets, trombones, saxophones, full brass sections, and the nice thing is they recorded it all of the instruments a bunch of different ways. So you can choose between like staccato, where they're playing it really short and quick. You can choose like sustained notes. You can choose like where they put vibrato on it. And in this case, I'd never done it before, but I chose the muted trumpet. So a trumpet with the mute in it. It's a bit more muffled, a bit more like rusty and rustic and vintage to me that I thought suited the nature of this song in particular well. I also think, you got to use MIDI horns sparingly. A lot of people will tell you not to use them at all, but given that this pack is pretty good, I think having it low in the mix and having a more muted sound in general, just as sort of an underbelly and undertone threaded throughout the song, it works really well. Another instrument that I really wanted was keys, not just piano doing like jazzy sort of things, but like a Rhodes, an organ, a whirly. And luckily I have a friend, Tony Vang, who I enlisted to play all of these instruments for me. It absolutely blew my mind going through these takes. And it really filled out the mix because prior to that, the song was basically done, but it was really just guitar and bass, and it felt kind of like it was missing something, and the keys added a bunch of texture to it. The organ added a lot of soul, and the Rhodes just adds a nice smoothness throughout. So combining a bunch of different keys was something I've never done before, but worked really well in the context of this song. And one thing I'll say is, pretty much all of my songs up to this point have been almost entirely MIDI besides the guitar and bass and vocals, which I do myself. Lately, I've been trying to stay away from that and enlisting help of friends and fellow musicians because that real instrument sound and instrumentation, that's not something that you can replicate easy with MIDI. And having that kind of feeling of multiple musicians in the room adds a ton of nuance to your song, and I can't recommend it enough. I also reached out to my friend Paul to do bass on the song, and man, it was great. He got some like Thundercat vibes going on. We put a bit of chorus effect on the bass, and or sometimes I just play the bass myself, but I'm not a bass-minded player. It doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. He added a bunch of nice fills and just subtle things throughout where all the instruments are talking to each other, and that was a really cool thing to see. It's something I'm leaning more towards. If you can get real instruments in your mixes, I cannot recommend it enough. Now, guitar is another instrument that is always a mainstay in my productions, but when it comes to jazz, there's a few things I do to my guitar that is different than I would normally in a pop song. When I'm playing live on guitar in a jazzy context, I usually switch to the bridge pickup, which gives it more bassy overtones, and that works great for solo play, and I do try and incorporate a bit more of that bass heaviness into the songs, but that can also clash with bass in terms of the production, so it really comes up to you to decide what kind of tone you want for it. But I think there's a nice mid-range and a bass tone when you switch to a bridge pickup on your guitar. I'm also using a virtual amp plugin by Neural DSP. Absolutely love their brands. I have a couple different amps by them, but for this, I go for the Corey Wong pack. It's a great pack full of clean sounds, and it's wonderful for that jazzy pop, funk, R&B sort of mixture, like a bunch of different clean tones to choose from. Yeah, I cannot recommend that plugin enough. Now let's get into the production of the song. For me, jazz is controlled chaos. It's super complex and there's a lot going on, a lot of back and forths, call and responses, and it's the way the instruments interact with each other that really makes a song jazzy to me. So even though this is a slower, simple song, for instance, the verse only has 2 chords, what I really tried to do was have the instruments in conversation with each other. And what I mean by that is the guitar is doing like a really quick, subtle lick that's really in the background, and then maybe the bass answers that. Or when there is space, you know, a key is coming in with a little fill after a vocal run.
Sitting there just watching and waiting with no conversation. Eventually.
And even the ways me and Becca played off each other in our vocal performances, where I'm kind of doing response to her main vocal, at least in the second chorus.
Honey, come closer.
Come a little closer.
And tell me it's alright.
The point here is that with jazz, there's always a lot of motion, whether or not you're fully cognizant of it. If you ever go to a live jazz concert and watch the stand-up bass player, like they're going ham on that. And well, I was trying to do similar things here with the bass and the guitar, where there's just a bunch of just subtle, crazy stuff happening in the background where you got to listen to the song multiple times to really like absorb all the different fills and licks. And it's not like they're in your face. It's not like they're actively like, oh, what was that? What was that? It's subtle stuff that you hide in the background almost. And it really just adds to that sort of busy atmosphere, which is another thing I should note as we get into the production section. When I was writing the song and producing it, I was imagining being in like a crowded jazz club. I wanted like the clink of silverware, the murmur of an audience, the sound of cars passing by in the street. Like that was my mindset when I was making this song. And I wanted that busyness to be sort of reflected in it. I even put in a bit of ambient sound of like a dinner party very low in the mix to kind of set the scene and set the setting like that. Another thing that I try out in the song that I don't usually do is the way I pan the instrument. If you've watched some of my production tutorial videos before, you know I love wide panning things hard left, hard right, getting a big sound. And that's great, especially for, you know, standard pop or like indie folk. But a cool technique I learned recently while watching an Audio Haze video about NPR Tiny Desk is the way that they pan the instruments to make it more realistic. So for instance, if you're watching Tiny Desk, like you'll see the drummer in that corner, and you'll see the bass player in that corner and the singer in the center. And that's kind of the way they pan the mix. They want it to be realistic and an accurate representation of the sound that was going on in the room when they recorded. And I kind of wanted to do that too and ground the song. Even though all these instruments were recorded separately, we obviously weren't in the same room. I wanted to create that feeling that maybe you were in a room listening to this song. And the way I did that was, you know, I have the guitar panned a bit to the right while the keys are panned a bit to the left. Even with the vocals between me and Becca's, it wasn't exactly, you know, both of us in the center or left and right. Like I'm a little to the right sometimes while she's a little to the left, and that kind of plays off the call and response we have going. And that's something I've never done before because usually I'm a sucker for symmetry, I'm a sucker for wide sounds, but in this case I wanted a more realistic band setting, and I thought that worked well. Another cool, easy production technique for getting a jazzy or a lo-fi, vinyl crackle sort of feel to your songs is the Isotope Vinyl plugin. Usually I end up honestly just taking this off, but I always like to play around with it because it does have some cool effects. I kind of get annoyed sometimes by those like vinyl crackles. It's like too much. It makes the mix sound kind of weird, but it has this cool feature where you can kind of like rewind through the decades. You can choose like 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. And really all it's doing is like increasing the highs, like making it sound more like it's coming through a radio or something like that. It just sometimes can add a nice bit of rawness and make the song more imperfect in the best of ways, you know? In my mind, when I was creating the song, like the word that kept coming to my mind was timeless. Like I wanted this to be a song that could sound like it was made in any decade. And you know, each decade is defined by their limitations and what the production was at the time. So sometimes it can be nice to sort of rewind the clocks or pull in some of these, like, you know, that static noise, the vinyl crackle noise. It's something that can easily be overdone, but with the right amount of touch, can really ground a song and bring it back to reality, stop it from sounding overpolished and overproduced. For me, a lot of this song was about experimentation and trying things I hadn't done before, whether it was using real instruments, the way I pan stuff, or the plugins that I put on the instruments or the master track. And I think that's a lot about what jazz is about. It's about experimentation. That's all I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you go check out my new song, Can We Start Over? Stay tuned, subscribe, and like to the channel so you can see more videos like this. Every month I have a production video. Every month I have another video breaking down some other sort of thing that indie musicians might need. And I release original music and covers on this channel. Plenty of good stuff on the way and big announcements to come. Thank you very much for watching. See you around next time.
Wouldn't it be nice?